Have you ever wondered why your mind feels like a battlefield even when nothing outside is really wrong? Why do you keep smiling when inside you're screaming for peace? And tell me, how long have you been pretending you're okay just to survive one more day? What if your anxiety isn't just a feeling, but a message you've been ignoring for too long?
That's a powerful question. And as we start to uncover some answers today, if you find this conversation helpful, remember to hit that follow button for our channel, Think and Rebound, so you don't miss out on future episodes. The idea of escaping inner turmoil can be a very compelling one, almost a desperate plea for some kind of relief. But what if the way out isn't about running away from these feelings, but instead it's about really understanding them, about learning how to live with them in a way that gives us strength instead of holding us back? Today, we're going to explore exactly that question through the lens of self-development, shifting our perspectives and hearing about the real-life journeys of people who have faced their own anxieties head-on. Before we dive into their stories, we want to let you know that we'll be using assumed names for the individuals we discuss today, focusing on their experiences rather than their identities.
Today, our main story revolves around someone we'll call Eleanor. Eleanor had a deep-seated dream of making a significant impact in the world, to create something lasting and meaningful that would touch countless lives. From the outside, she appeared to be living a successful life. But deep down, Eleanor was constantly battling a relentless wave of anxiety, especially self-doubt and an intense fear of not being good enough. Every new opportunity, every crucial conversation, every moment where she had to step forward became a battleground for her inner critic. She'd prepare meticulously, sometimes for weeks, only to feel her heart race and her hands tremble when it was time to actually do it. The ironic part was, she was incredibly capable, but her anxiety often cast a long shadow over her true potential.
Eleanor's anxiety showed up in various ways. She'd meticulously replay every conversation in her head, analyzing every single word for any possible misstep. Sleeping became a real challenge for her, often broken by vivid, anxiety-fueled dreams. On a physical level, she frequently experienced headaches and digestive issues, which are pretty common signs of ongoing stress. This wasn't just a tough day or two. This was her everyday reality. Things really came to a head when she was given the chance to lead a major project, something she had dreamed of and worked towards for years. But the sheer size of the responsibility, combined with her deep-seated fear of not being perfect, became almost completely overwhelming.
I think many of us can truly connect with that feeling, can't we? That moment when something you've always wanted, something you've worked so hard for, suddenly feels like this impossible mountain to climb because of the fear it sparks inside you. Eleanor found herself completely stuck. She started putting things off, missing deadlines, and her work, which was usually flawless, began to decline. Her team noticed, and a wave of shame just washed over her. It was a cycle that just kept repeating. The more anxious she got, the worse her performance, which then just fed more anxiety. If we were standing in Eleanor's shoes, facing such an incredible opportunity, but having our own minds work against us, what would we do? How do we even begin to find the courage to push through that kind of inner resistance?
This is where Eleanor's journey took a really important turn. Instead of trying to ignore or just push away her anxiety, she made a conscious decision to face it head-on. She started by acknowledging that her anxiety wasn't some kind of weakness. It was actually a signal that something in her life needed her attention. Her very first step was to look into resources on mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. She began really small, with just 5 minutes of guided meditation every morning, focusing on her breath and simply observing her thoughts without judgment.
And this wasn't about clearing her mind completely, was it? It was about learning to observe her thoughts rather than being completely consumed by them. She learned that she didn't have to automatically believe every anxious thought that popped into her head. She slowly started to challenge them, asking herself, is this thought truly based on facts, or is it just a feeling I'm having right now? This practice, even though it was really tough at first, slowly began to create a little bit of space between Eleanor and her anxiety. She also started keeping a thought journal where she'd write down her anxious thoughts and then actively try to reframe them. For example, instead of writing, I'm definitely going to mess up this big presentation, she'd reframe it to something like, I've prepared well for this presentation and I will do my absolute best. It sounds incredibly simple, but the very act of writing it down and then actively reframing it really started to rewire her thinking patterns.
The transformation wasn't like flipping a switch. It was gradual, but very steady. Eleanor started to realize that her relentless pursuit of perfection was actually holding her back. She began to truly embrace the concept of good enough, rather than needing everything to be perfect. This shift in her mindset was incredibly freeing. She started entrusting tasks to others more, learning to truly trust her team, and allowing herself to make mistakes without completely spiraling into self-blame. She also started incorporating physical activity into her daily routine, taking regular walks in nature, which really helped to ground her and release all that built-up tension. The physical act of moving forward also became a metaphor for her own journey, reminding her to keep taking one step at a time, even when things felt overwhelming.
Her biggest turning point came during that really important project she was leading. There was this critical moment where they hit a major roadblock. A key client was really unhappy with an initial design they had presented. In the past, Eleanor would have completely fallen apart, but this time she paused, took a deep breath. She acknowledged that first wave of panic, but instead of letting it take over, she used all the techniques she had been learning. She reminded herself that setbacks are just a natural part of any big project, and that her ability to adapt and find solutions was far more important than trying to avoid every single mistake. She calmly brought her team together, brainstormed different solutions, and then presented a revised plan to the client. She openly admitted the initial misstep, but then clearly showed them a path forward. The client was actually very impressed by how calm she was in her proactive way of dealing with the problem.
Eleanor's story is a powerful example of what self-development can do, and she's definitely not the only one. Let's consider a couple of other brief examples. Take Michael, for instance, a young person who had this big dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur, but he really struggled with severe social anxiety. He found it almost impossible to connect with new people or even speak up in group discussions, which was really holding him back from achieving his goals. His breakthrough moment came when he started practicing exposure therapy, which basically means gradually putting himself into social situations that made him uncomfortable. He began by just making eye contact with strangers, then moved on to ordering coffee and trying a bit of small talk, and eventually he even joined a public speaking club. Every single small victory built up his confidence, proving to himself that his fears were often much bigger in his head than the actual reality.
Then there's Clara. Clara's greatest aspiration was to create a harmonious and stable home for her family, but she felt constantly overwhelmed by her responsibilities, leading to chronic stress and feeling completely burned out. Clara learned the immense power of setting boundaries and being able to say no. At first, she felt incredibly guilty about it, but she quickly realized that by constantly taking on too much, she was actually doing a disservice to herself and her child. She started delegating tasks wherever possible, bravely asking for help from friends and family. And most importantly, she began scheduling non-negotiable me time for self-care, even if it was just 15 minutes of quiet reading or listening to her favorite music. This seemingly small act of prioritizing her own well-being had a profound ripple effect on her overall stress levels and significantly improved her ability to manage her life with a greater sense of calm.
What these stories all powerfully show us is a fundamental truth. Truly escaping inner turmoil isn't about some kind of magic formula. It's about intention and consistent action. It's about understanding that our minds, as powerful as they are, can absolutely be retrained. It's about recognizing that anxiety isn't necessarily an enemy to be completely defeated, but rather a part of our human experience that we can genuinely learn to manage and even learn from.
It's about making a crucial shift from a reactive stance, where we're constantly fighting against our own feelings, to a much more proactive one, where we actively equip ourselves with the right tools and smart strategies to navigate them. It's about systematically building up our resilience, one thoughtful, small step at a time. Eleanor, Michael, and Clara didn't completely eliminate their anxieties, because that's often not realistic, but they absolutely learned to coexist with them in a way that allowed them to truly thrive. They understood that personal growth isn't a final destination you arrive at, but a continuous journey of learning, adapting, and most importantly, self-compassion.
So, after hearing Eleanor's journey and the experiences of others, what have we really taken away today? We've seen how mindfulness and CBT techniques can create a crucial space from overwhelming thoughts, allowing us to thoughtfully challenge their truthfulness. We've explored the incredibly liberating power of embracing good enough over that often crippling pursuit of absolute perfection. And we've truly witnessed the profound impact of consistent action, even the smallest steps, in gradually overcoming deeply ingrained fears, much like Michael's journey with exposure therapy and Clara's courageous decision to embrace healthy boundaries.
Ultimately, it really comes down to recognizing that while you can't always control the initial wave of anxiety that hits you, you absolutely can control your response to it. You have the power to choose to engage in self-development, to diligently learn new ways of thinking, and to practice genuine self-compassion. The escape isn't some distant place out there. It's right here within you, in the thoughtful choices you make every single day to truly understand, effectively manage, and ultimately transcend your inner turmoil.
If you're feeling overwhelmed by inner turmoil right now, we really encourage you to just take one small actionable step today. Don't try to solve everything all at once. Just choose one single strategy we discussed. Maybe it's spending 5 minutes on mindful breathing, or starting a simple thought journal, or even just carving out 15 minutes of completely uninterrupted me time. The most important thing is to simply begin.
Yes, exactly. Just pick one. Start small, stay consistent, and always remember that every single step forward, no matter how tiny it feels, is a significant victory. Your personal journey to inner peace truly begins with a single intentional choice. You genuinely have the inherent power within you to navigate your own mind and to cultivate a more resilient, peaceful self.